CBC.
We actually attend a church that is actually, really, when they say
Amazing.
most churches have events for married couples and
Once a year.
but when you go, we just did an event this past weekend where our church is going to marry, I think it's over 75 or 80 couples, or the number kind of fluctuates up and down, but they're going to marry 80 couples at one time during the service on November the 4th. And they're
footing the bill.
And then they're blessing them with a monetary gift afterwards to go on their honeymoon.
And they took care of the cost of them having premarital.
And that's one of the benefits, because we just did, we worked with 6 couples on Friday and Saturday, but we were just one table of multiple that were in the room. And the great part about that is when you go through a premarital program, whether it's counseling or sessions or anything like that, well, here in Texas, they actually give you $60 off of your marriage license,
which is really cool,
which is kind of preventative. And so I think it's pretty cool that you actually invest, and I think it was maybe it was about 10 to 12 hours worth of training, 8 weeks worth of training, and we did it in 8 to 10 hours. I would say 10 to 10, about 8 to 10 hours of training. And these couples it was so great to see light bulbs come on.
Yeah.
Not because they didn't know anything, but because they start, I think they're just like the things we're sharing with you tonight. It gives you something to think about. Maybe you haven't thought enough about, or even had the conversation yet. So we're going to be covering some of those things with you tonight during our Thursday night live session.
And we are excited to be with you. Either you're watching us live right now, and we're glad you're here, or you're going to be watching us later on. So please, if you watch it later on, please let us know where you're watching from. We appreciate you being a part of our community, and we are growing, and we love serving you all. So let's get into the questions.
So this is not going in any particular order. We are actually just going to give you 10 things that you should be talking about or conversating about or have talked about, or maybe you can dig a little bit deeper into when it comes to conversation.
And if you want to add other questions in
by all
there,
means,
please
jump in there. Hey, Miss T.
Thanks for seeing you.
So the first part of it is we're going to start with probably we would say the most foundational one is communication. Now, when we say communication, we're not talking about like we're doing with you guys right now, even though that's a part of it. In your relationships, you actually want to be communicating with a purpose, communicating with something in mind, and even practicing some of the things that we have shared with you in past videos and even in this video. So let's start out. When we say communication, the main purpose of the communication in your relationship is for understanding.
Yes.
And also to communicate
your wants and your needs.
Go ahead.
Active listening and assertive speech. So active listening means you're listening to understand, not to respond. And assertive speech means that you're clear about what you need or what you want the other person to give you or to do.
Because how many times have you had a conversation with your significant other and felt like you weren't heard, or felt like your point didn't get across? Maybe you didn't communicate it exactly how you felt or what you thought, and it still led to a conflict.
And I think a lot of times conflicts come because we're taught to talk, but very few of us are taught to listen with the whole goal of understanding, which again, we talk about the empathy muscle. We want to help build that empathy muscle. So the higher your level of intelligence, your emotional IQ, and the higher your empathy, the easier it is going to be for you to listen, to understand, and put yourself in the other person's shoes.
Because I think when you're going through a communication or episode, just say in your relationship, most people think we've heard it from couples over and over and over again. Oh, our communication, we communicate really well.
Yeah. But then you say, well, how do you resolve conflict? Oh, we don't resolve conflict well.
Because we don't fight.
How many couples would say, especially as newlyweds, one of the questions that we a lot of times like to ask newlyweds or people who are newly married or just starting out is, what's the one thing about that person that you don't like? And if you don't know what it is, that means you guys haven't spent enough time together. You haven't had enough differences to go through to know what you don't like.
I would even say maybe not even so much time together, but you haven't been digging deep enough to talk about, or I think that the things haven't came up yet.
Yeah.
That you may not be aware that is there lying dormant. But if you don't provoke the conversations to come out, then you won't know if there's really an issue there. So we're going to say just communication. You know, Proverbs actually comes to mind when you think about it when it comes to conflict, because Proverbs, when it talks about having a gentle conversation, a gentle speak turns away wrath. Well, you should be able to say anything to your significant other and it not provoke a fight. You should be able to have an adult type conversation with each other, even when things that you don't agree with and don't like.
Right.
That's just a part of the relationship.
And just because Gil and I just had a situation this week. You don't know, we just moved to Texas. We're just trying to buy a house, trying to look for some place to live. And we had like a rub. And whenever we are trying to make decisions like this, it's always tension. And it's because there's what you want, what you need, and what the other person wants and needs. And it's understanding how to communicate in a way where it's not that you're demanding what you want, but that you're sharing what you need.
Right.
And I think what happened with us this week was I had an idea in my mind of what I wanted and the way I thought it should go. And Gil had an idea in his mind where he wanted to go, and we hadn't talked. And so when we clashed, it's like, wait a minute, let's slow down. Let's really think about this. Let's do this together, because I think sometimes we're different. So you have this stuff going on in your brain and he has it going on, and if you don't talk about those things, then it really does create a divide between you. And it doesn't feel good when you're doing it, but it really does help you to get closer, and it helps you to have a better understanding of that person.
So that kind of leads us into number 2, conflict resolution. If you've had them, have you resolved them? And if you have resolved them, how did you actually do it? Renee gave a good point. What we just had this episode this week where conflict resolution, we used this past week, think of it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity not only for you to get to know the significant other or this other person that you're talking about spending a significant amount of time with, probably
the rest of your life
with, that it's probably going to be pretty important that you know how to resolve those conflicts.
Yeah. And I want to bring up something that's going on in the media right now. And when it all started a while ago, I kind of addressed it, the bad marriage for life. I think one of the things that's important to go into marriage with an understanding is that marriage is forever. I think that if you go into marriage with the idea and with the plan and with the goal of it being forever, your approach is different. Mm-hmm. It's easy for me to just throw away our relationship because we don't agree on a 2 or 4 bedroom, or we don't agree on the amount. But when you know that you've gone into this for a lifetime, you approach it differently. You have to work through your feelings and really understand that marriage is not disposable. And there are cases where marriages are dissolved and God gives you biblical reasons for, and if you're not safe. But to just throw away a relationship because of irreconcilable differences, it says, I said something at the last video, if you are selfish, you do not need to get married. And I think that we need to understand that marriage is the place where you go to serve and not to be served.
Yep. So we're not going to elaborate on a bunch of them, but if you got a comment or anything that you want to put in the chat, put it in the chat.
Yeah.
The next one we want to talk about is boundaries. When we talk about boundaries in your relationship, you have them. Some people may call them deal breakers.
Yeah. Well, no, boundaries are, and it's something I thought about and I was thinking about, it was one of the most important boundaries for you to establish as a new couple or when you're first getting married is to realign who you go to for when you have problems. Mm-hmm. It's changing that, because the Bible says to leave your mother and father and to cleave to your wife. So when you get married, it used to be that you used to go to your boys, or you went to your parents,
or your
girls. But when you get married, now you have to learn how to go to each other. And this is so important, because the person that you go to and talk to is the person you're going to be connected to and close to. And it really does make the oneness happen faster when you get used to going to each other.
Right.
Because one of the things the Lord showed me was you can't get mad at him if he doesn't know how you feel if you never talk.
So I even think about the boundaries when I'm talking about, when I said the deal breakers, there are things that you are going to establish in your relationship, like we don't call each other out of our names.
Right.
We don't curse at each other. Those are kind of things that I'm talking about. But also you're going to have to change the dynamics of how you actually interact when we talk about boundaries. Who is going to be allowed into your conversations? It's not going to be, it shouldn't be like Renee was describing, your extended friends and things like that. But you should be able to say, this is the boundary that when we have a problem, we are going to keep it amongst ourselves. We're not going to go run to mom. We're not going to say, I'm going to call my dad.
And we're not going to run to social media, y'all. Please don't go put everything on social media when you have a problem.
That is not the place to air out things that you may not be in agreement on, or you may have a conflict with, because yeah, you may get some clicks and some likes and some people that align themselves with what you think in your philosophy, but that is going to be undermine and destroy the relationship that you're trying to establish.
And it affects the ability for the other person to trust you, because boundaries, I believe, are an inward swinging door. These are the things that I won't do. It's not the things I'm telling you you can't do.
Right.
That's control. So boundaries are about you saying, these are the things within our relationship that I'm going to guard, that when you come and tell me something that's important to you and something that's private, I'm not going to share it with anyone other than just you.
So those are the things that you want to establish. So if you're just joining us, we thank you for coming in and hanging out with us tonight. We're just sharing with you 10 things that you can actually be thinking about and talking about in your relationship when you first get married, that even if you haven't covered them, these are things that you are, trust me, you're going to be constantly talking about these things throughout your relationship.
Going through it.
So you should make it second habit. It should become a second habit to where you're going to naturally be doing it. So the next one we're going to talk about is number 4, roles and responsibilities. You want to talk about that side on the number?
And it's not just about who's going to do what. It's understanding that God created marriage with a hierarchy. It's God, your husband, and then you. If you have a problem with being the leader as the man, or if you have a problem with submitting as the woman, that's something you guys are going to have to work out, because now we got this high feminine, high masculine energy. God designed it to be that way for a reason. And one of the things that I can say that I appreciate about submission is that it doesn't mean I don't have a mind or a brain or goals or dreams. It means that the responsibility for our family is not on me, it's on Gil. It's my job to support him, to encourage him, to protect him, to pray for him, to help him to see things he doesn't see. But ultimately, the decisions for our family fall on the head. And so establishing those roles and responsibilities, that's one role that God already established. But as far as establishing who's going to do what in the household, those are the things that you guys have to work out as a couple.
Right. And you can look at the chores and things like who's going to wash the dishes and take out. While those things may be important as well, but it's going to go far deeper than that.
Right.
You know, the roles and responsibilities that we talk about are the things that are going to set the tone for your relationship throughout its entirety.
Yeah.
So if you don't establish those things and talk about them now, it's going to cause a problem later on.
Yeah. And it's just understanding that marriage is a lifelong commitment, and therefore it's a lifelong learning. It's a classroom.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a lifelong classroom where you're going to learn about the things about yourself that you love and the things about yourself that you don't love. That's what marriage is going to teach
and
you.
You should become a student of your significant other. If you're married, your spouse, but if you're still in the dating stage, your fiance, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your significant other, become a student of them. Sometimes I use the analogy of, right now, if you're in a relationship, when the other person is not right, something is wrong, or it's just not okay, something is out of whack a little bit, they can just walk in the room. They don't even have to say anything. You just know. Yeah, you just know it from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So that's the number 1. Number 5 we're going to talk about is, how does the family feel? Have you talked not just about your plans for family? Do we want to have kids? How many do we have? When we want to have them? But also your extended family.
And this is a good time for you guys to establish as a couple that, and this is something that we did, I will handle the issues with my family. And you will handle the issues with your family. Because it is not my job to check his mom or his sister. It's not his job to check my mom or my sister. And that was one of the things that we learned early, because it's something that they'll be more receptive to take it from them, from their family member, than they will for you. And so you want to be careful about interjecting them into a space where it's going to cause unnecessary heartache later on. And so, in talking about are you going to have kids? Do you want to have kids? So that's another part of establishing your family and roles.
I'm gonna throw a wrench in the works. We had number 5. I'm keeping track too. You know, I got notes over here on the side, but I'm keeping track where we're at. Question.
We have a game this week. Our game is different this week.
It's called Moments.
Moment.
Moments.